Sure. I'm gonna hand it over to y'all. I call to order the August 6th special joint public meeting of the Cincinnati School Board and Cincinnati City Council's Healthy Neighborhoods Committee. Madam Treasurer, would you please call the roll?
Here.
Mr. Lindy, Ms. Mapp,
Here.
Dr. Moffat, Vice President Weinberg,
Here.
President Bolton.
Present. And now we'll turn this meeting over to the Vice Mayor and to our Chair of representing the board tonight, Dr. Moffat. Welcome all City Council folks. We're thrilled to have you in our house. Welcome to the audience as well. And thank you, staff, for being here.
Thank you, President Bolton. Do we need, Ms. Autry, do we need to call the roll for City Council? I'm sorry.
Okay. Say it again. So you know what I'll do? So this is, I'm Vice Mayor Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney. I will just point out who's here. And so we'll do that instead of, that's usually what we do at our committee meetings instead of formally calling the roll. So we have here Councilmember Reggie Harris, Councilmember Mark Jeffries, Councilmember Mika Owens, Councilmember Scotty Johnson. And I'm sorry, you know, the green, it's the green, and there's so much green. Councilmember Anna Albee, thank you so much. So council members Anna Albee and Scotty Johnson are actually members of the committee. And so we thank, and Reggie here, no, you're not on the committee. Okay, I'm going back to last year. Okay, so but we thank all of our council members for being here. It's really important for us to work together with CPS, and the purpose of these joint meetings that we're trying to have quarterly is to look at issues that the city and CPS can work on together. So I want to thank all the city staff for being here also. Thank you so much. And I'll now turn the mic over to Dr. Kareem Moffat.
Well, we're just going to get started. And thank you to the CPS staff and the city staff for coming together, because we made this commitment, a year and a half ago? And we have kept it for the most part, that we are going to work together collaboratively. So let's just get started. And actually, it's Vice Mayor Kearney who's up first.
Okay, so should we start with public comment then? Because I know you do public comment first. Is that better? Okay. All right, so we're gonna do what CPS does, and we do public comment first oftentimes too, so.
So we do have 2 minutes per speaker. If anyone would like to fill out a card to speak, we've got a couple of them. And then you do get 2 minutes to come to the mic. The buzzer will go off, and we have online speakers as well. Do we have any? We have no online speakers tonight, so that's great. But we do have a full house, so maybe we have some people.
And just to clarify, so my understanding with the CPS meetings is that after 5 minutes, we stop accepting cards?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so our first speaker is Iris Rowley. And she would like to talk about transportation. Iris, you have the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes.
Call the next speaker so they can come down.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker, I put on my glasses to see the card. The next speaker will be Brandy Tidwell, followed by Andrew Williams. Okay, Ms. Rowley, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Vice Mayor. This is weird for me. I think this is my first time speaking to a joint session, but I'm not scared of y'all. So, to the Board of CPS and to the elected officials of the city of Cincinnati, you all know my name is Iris Rowley. And I'm coming today to talk about transportation, but more specifically, what I've heard from the board meeting last night. I am an avid, active taxpayer and have been for a very long time. You all know that call of actions were made last year to come down to Government Square in service to the children and to ensure that the Cincinnati police were adhering to the provisions, the trainings, and the outcomes of the collaborative agreement. That has been the role of the Cincinnati Black United Front since we filed the federal lawsuit in 2001. And we take that very seriously. So when the call was made to assist with the children, to help them navigate, to help them understand, and to protect them from adults that could potentially want to harm them, and we saw lots of it. But the remarks that I heard last night really, really bothered me. Because these children belong to all of us, and they belong to all of us all the time. There's no separation when they leave the schools to when they hit Government Square to when they get home. It should be our job to ensure their safety as well as others. That should be all of our job. So President Bolton, the comments that you made last night really bothered me from a problem solver standpoint, because all hands are on deck. We've been meeting with officials from SORTA to the business district to the city, with community, trying to come up with ways in which we can assist. Had we gotten a notice that an additional 2,000 kids were going to be there, we could have planned accordingly. Now we're trying to.
Ms. Rowley, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Your time is up.
Thank
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Okay, the next speaker is Brandy Tidwell, followed by Andrew Williams. Ms. Tidwell, you have the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes.
Is this mic on? Greetings. I'm just gonna pick up, piggyback off Miss Iris. As far as the transportation, the solution, I feel, let's get the crossing guards to monitor some of those spots that are needed. I'm here on literacy. Literacy, my children cannot read. I present this to CPS, Books for Bucks, which I implement myself. But it seems that I'm gonna have to do it myself. So I went to Title I to get funds or ask for funds that can fund me as being the totem pole, because the lower pole does not get looked at, but I am the one with the solutions. Also, I have a daughter that's in a pathway that was rejected for not getting immunizations. So now you have hindered another prosperous Black child, which hurts my heart. But I am here and I'm still going to fight for her. And those are things I feel that CPS overall should be, and the city should look as though we have to look toward the future in this moment. because there are a lot of children that don't get their vaccinations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your comments. The next speaker is Andrew Williams. And Mr. Williams, you have the pleasure of the floor for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I answered the call last year in February with Iris Rowley and the collaborative to try and find answers, down at Fountain Square. And we got a lot of people that came down, but we were really overwhelmed. I was very surprised to find out that there's going to be another 2,000 people down there, kids down there this year. We did everything that we could do. We worked well with the police, hand in hand. They liked having us down there because they felt like it was easier for the kids to come to us rather than them handle the kids. We implemented a feed and seed program because it crossed our mind that, hey, maybe these kids are down here and they're doing a lot of these things. But as we know, a lot of these kids aren't properly being fed. So we came up with a feed and seed program that was very successful, and we were able to gain a lot of these kids' trust. But the notion of another 2,000 kids down there without a plan, I think is dangerous for everybody. And I think that we definitely got to take a look at down there. Let's not wait until a problem happens like it did last year, and we tried to catch the tail end of it. So we had a lot of volunteers. Finally, some funding came in, but it was definitely not enough. We ended up with 6 people to handle all those kids that were down there. We probably need triple that. So I think it's important that we just all collaborate, work together, understand that, hey, there's going to be some issues down there, but they are our children, and it is up to us to take back our community and try to help these kids. Is my time up?
You have 20 seconds.
And again, we just want to be notified as we are going through this process, because if we're going to put people down there, then I want to get those people prepared to go down there. These are people that are in the community. I think you need coaches and people that are in the community to help these kids, get home safe. And we got to open up some doors for them to have things to do down there when they're downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I just want to point out to everyone that we are going to talk about transportation today and some plans about that. So we will get to that on the agenda. I'll turn the mic back over to, I'm the first person here, right? Okay, not turn it over yet. Okay, so we're going to start our agenda. The first item on the agenda is Keep Cincinnati Beautiful. And we would like to call up Jonathan Ady, the Executive Director, who's going to talk about Adopt a Spot and CPS. And okay. Please introduce yourself. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm not Jonathan, but I work under him. My name is Madison Lentz, and I am the new coordinator for Keep Cincinnati Beautiful's Adopt a Spot program. I recently graduated from UC with a bachelor's in urban planning with a horticulture minor. And the project that I did in my last semester was utilizing the community health planning process and applying it to our Adopt a Spot program. So the process starts with a community health needs assessment. And then from there, a community health improvement plan is made. And so it's a continuous cycle and it repeats over and over again. So typically when, typically when a community health planner is assessing the current state of a community's health, they look at various factors that are called the social determinants of health. And so these are factors outside of the traditional healthcare system that influence an individual's well-being. So these are very complex and interconnected, and it's hard for one organization, let alone one program, to address all of these. So I chose to focus on the two that are can be most impacted by the Adopt a Spot program, which is the social and community aspect of community health, and the neighborhood and built environment that contributes to social community health. And so these are the current Adopt a Spot spatially, and also additional relevant property information such as public parks and land parcels that are owned by the city or the county. And so you can see there are some areas that have denser concentrations of adopt spots and some areas that don't have adopt spots currently. But even though they're not distributed throughout the whole city, there is a lot of potential for future adopt spots across the city. So you can see on this next map highlighted in green, maybe, is all the public land parcels and the public right-of-ways that exist along all of these roads. So all of these spots are open to be adopted by people and residents of Cincinnati. And so finding ways that we can increase adopt a spot participation and find out how that can improve our community's health. And so through my project, I looked at different factors that may have influenced the distribution of our adopt a spots and how we can work with people and meet people where they're at to encourage equitable volunteerism. And so there's a lot of factors and barriers that might prevent someone from adopting a spot. The social determinants of health we saw earlier. If someone's working 2 jobs, they might not have the time or capacity to spend their free time volunteering and picking up trash on the road. But everyone deserves to have quality green spaces and clean spaces to hang out in. And so the vision and goals of the program are to foster thriving communities where residents are engaged, connected, and empowered to improve their neighborhoods. And so the goal of this program is to achieve that through improved community cohesion. With a collective mindset, we can work together to make our city cleaner. So having networking events, educational events, and then offering resource pooling with partners, so that way we can offer places and things that bring people together rather than pull them apart.
Okay.
And then using people-driven community beautification efforts to drive what is happening and what these adopt a spot participants do. We want the programs and initiatives that come out of the program to be directly reflect what the community residents want to see in their own neighborhood. And that's going to vary drastically depending on the neighborhood because everyone's different and unique. So you want to adopt a spot. So what should you know before you apply to the Adopt a Spot program? So the activities that participants partake in include cleaning up litter along roadways and vacant lots, cutting grass and high weeds, removing unsolicited graffiti, planting greenery, or other ecological or restorative efforts. And we ask that participants commit to practicing safety while they're out volunteering, commit to 2 years in the program. We can be flexible and work with people. If they move, they might want to transition their spot, but we still want them to be involved in the program. And then report their results monthly so we can have data to monitor the impact of the program. And then when people are out in the community, want to make sure that they're talking to people and letting them know what they're doing and spreading the good things that they're trying to do for their neighborhood. And so when you apply to adopt a spot, you receive a supply kit. And in this are gloves and high visibility vests, a litter stick, trash bags, graffiti removal wipes, a bucket, and an official sign posted at or near your adopted spot, showing our gratitude for the work and effort that people are putting in. And so what else can Adopt a Spot participants get for being involved in this program? So additional incentives will be offered to people to show that every little bit counts. So things like additional supplies, Adopt a Spot merchandise, planting trees or pollinator gardens, smaller community-led grant projects, appreciation awards, or art-based beautification initiatives can help further the legacy that participants are leaving in their space. And so if you want to sign up for the Adopt a Spot program and make an impact on the city and leave your mark, you can visit Keep Cincinnati Beautiful's website click the Get Involved tab. Then you'll submit an Adopt a Spot application. You'll pick up your supply kit or have arranged for it to be transported to your spot. You'll start cleaning your Adopt a Spot site. You'll submit results. After 3 months of submitting your results, your sign will be printed and installed. And then once you have all that done, you have your spot. So you can keep cleaning and explore other opportunities of how you can improve your space and get others to join in on the fun and make it an enjoyable experience for you and leave your legacy on the city and your neighborhood.
Excellent. I love this idea. So thank you so much. So my understanding is that you have over 75 spots already adopted. Is that right? But the goal is 1,000. Is it still 1,000?
I think the goal in the next year is 250.
Oh, 250. Okay.
But the next 3 years, our goal is 1,000.
Okay, 3 years to get up to 1,000. Okay. All right. I'm rushing it. So, and the idea too is how large is a spot? Let me start with that. Is that like a whole block or a lot?
So the size of the spot can vary.
Okay.
So anyone can sign up for an Adopt a Spot. So individuals, groups, or businesses. So if you're one person, you might want to adopt a block or a street. But if you're a business and you have more people, you might want to adopt a whole park or 2 or 3 adjacent streets. So it really is flexible depending on what the people who are volunteering can contribute.
Okay, and Keep Cincinnati Beautiful gives the actual supply, so there's no cost to the person adopting. It's just the time and labor.
Yep. Just time
Okay,
and
that's
labor.
wonderful. Okay, let me open up to questions. Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, this sounds wonderful. This sounds like an excellent volunteer opportunity for some of our students that may need volunteer hours. Can teams sign up like Taft, Senator, football teams? Can they sign up to do this and then after get their name on a sign?
Yeah. If as long as someone is willing to coordinate with us and gather people, anyone can sign up, a school group or other civic organization. It can be 1 to as many people as you want. So
Okay, good. Thank you.
Councilmember Jeffries.
Yeah, so Indianapolis, we are a competitive group, right? They have 1,000 blocks.
Already?
So
Oh, no.
that's what we
That's
want
where you
to,
got the
so we're not going to let them beat us, right?
yeah.
So just a few things. The city manager and the city has committed to have departments to adopt a spot. So think about like waterworks in front of waterworks or, other areas. So we're working with her on that. But I think the call to action also is for CPS. If schools maybe are interested in, like a school does adopt a block in front of their
Community
school or
council.
something like that, or
Girl
for
Scout
other
troops.
areas. So it's a great opportunity to hopefully hit that 1,000 before 3 years. So
Definitely. I
I'm
love
sensing
it.
a challenge here. I think in the spirit of the Olympics, I'm surprised that wasn't Board Member Weinberg that suggested that, but I'm sensing a little challenge. Maybe.
She would have had 1,000 adopted in a month. So yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
I just do have a quick question. Is there a flyer or a one-page summary that we can share out to our students and families or the particular schools?
Yeah, I can send that to you after this meeting.
that would be perfect.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
you.
It's very exciting. Adopt a spot. To go to Keep Cincinnati Beautiful website and sign up.
Awesome.
Great thing to do. Thank you. Appreciate you. Okay, so next we have a report about Imagination Library from the Literacy Coordinator, Christy High.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
First of all, thank you for the invite. And I am the Senior Community Engagement Specialist and Literacy Coordinator at Cincinnati Children's. I'm also a local children's book author and a big advocate for reading and literacy. I'm actually here tonight to announce an event that will be happening in 2025. It will be called Cincy Reads. We're very excited about this. It is a citywide literacy challenge that will increase awareness and the importance of reading and literacy. It is a 1-month effort that will take place in March because March is National Reading Month. And we are hosting this Cincinnati Children's along with City Hall as a collaboration and multiple community partners. So minutes will be read and logged in an app called Bean Stack. All of this information will be available in the local libraries, so families will understand how to use the app. There will also be paper forms for those who don't want to use the app. We will have ambassadors in the community that will collect these paper forms and collect this data and put it into the tracking system. So in the end, we can still gather all the data that is needed. Encompasses child and adult literacy. So we won't just be focusing on kids, even though that is the bigger portion of what we're doing. The community partners we have so far: Cincinnati Public Library, United Way of Greater Cincinnati, Cincinnati Public Schools, Win Reading, Kennedy Heights Art Center, Waterford Upstart, Queen City Book Bank, and the Literacy Lab. They all will be hosting their own small pop-up events as we approach March of 2025 to get everybody excited, get the focus on literacy and what we're trying to do in the community. So as I mentioned, it will take place March 2025. Over the next few months, we will be discussing promotional materials, read the reading goal. How many minutes of reading are we aiming for? Right now, we're thinking 513. That makes sense, right? Promotional events, like I said, will be leading up to the main event, so there'll be a lot of pop-up things happening. Award levels will be happening based on sponsorships and donations. There will be levels of awards for the kids, how they perform, adults, how many minutes are read as we're leading up to it. We will have events that are tracking the data of how far along we are as we approach the big event. There will be media blitz, news segments, probably by Vice Mayor Kearney, maybe myself, hopefully. And then there will be a big closing event that announce the success of the city. And we want to join with some of the bigger sponsors like the Reds, the Bengals. And so there will be a big prize for whoever reads the most minutes or who excels above the goal.
That's great.
Like I said, sponsor ideas right now, the Reds, FCC, Kroger, local businesses. We're hoping to get lots of donations so we could give prizes out as we hit each milestone. And then my passion, the Imagination Library, Hamilton County, it will bring a bigger focus on this literacy program. So for those who may not know, Hamilton County Imagination Library of Ohio at Cincinnati Children's is a novel approach to promoting early literacy. So the program focuses on kids ages 0 to 5, and they receive free books in the mail monthly. So they will have a library by the time they're 5 of 60 books. The scope, the Imagination Library aims to help accelerate children's development and kindergarten readiness. Currently, over 31,000 children are enrolled in Hamilton County. That's a big portion of my role as the literacy coordinator, getting these kids enrolled, finding these pockets of kids that we're missing. But we're at 63%, which is great. 2 years ago, we were at 55%. So we are doing great. Our program distributes over 350,000 books every year in Hamilton County. We have about 13,000 children in the city of Cincinnati, and CPS enrolled 63% of those kids too. This is about 13,000 times 12 months, 156,000 books that these kids are getting in their homes. It's huge. And I know we focus a lot on the kindergarten readiness and within CPS and how it's affecting the scores. We still are gathering data right now for this upcoming year because COVID did have an effect on, we all know COVID had an effect on the reading scores and everything. So we're working on that. Here's just a heat map showing you the kids that we're reaching and the kids that are in need. So we're out there, we're in the community. I know a lot of you guys see us out there at the schools, libraries, just trying to find these kids and making sure that they can get these free books. It's just another map just showing you where we're trying to hit, where we are, and we're looking for champions in all these areas of the underserved kids. This is just another slide showing the impact of home literacy activities. I gotta let you guys read over this. I won't go into all these details. And then the next few slides are just some information from parents about the benefit of the program, how they see it supporting their kids, how thankful they are for this program. So with this big Cincinnati citywide event, we will encompass all these things, all these different programs that a lot of people don't know about. So that's it. If anyone would like to give suggestions or anything, we are in the, like I said, we're in the early planning stages. We've only had like 3 meetings, but we are very excited about it.
Well, I'm really excited about this too. I want to thank Ethan Nichols from my office for joining your team. I think it's, he's always excited after every meeting and we're excited about this. It's just wonderful. I was thinking we talked about competition. Should we challenge some other cities like Columbus and Cleveland to see who can read the
Was
most?
the first to do it, so I do want to beat them because they did really well with their campaign. I have all their data and numbers, so I can keep track of how well we're doing.
Okay, good. But little friendly competition in the
Yes,
state is always a good thing. This is wonderful. So what can we do to support Imagination Library? First of all, I think, when young people receive a gift at home, a book, I mean, you know how we feel getting like Amazon packages. It's always exciting, right? I mean, even though you know what's in it because you ordered it yourself, but
yes.
getting a package every month with your name on it and you're a kid and it's a whole new book that's all yours. I mean, that is wonderful.
Yes,
I
yes.
just love that.
We can just continue to spread this through our social medias and any of our meetings that we're having in relation to education, because I come across a lot of parents that still don't know about this program, which is very surprising, but I guess kind of not if they're not being presented with the information. So that would be the biggest piece. And as we're doing this event, making sure that we're talking about Imagination Library as well. And as we're doing the pop-up events, we'll have enrollment pieces to this.
So, do the hospitals let the parents know about this program when the children are first born?
Yes, they are doing much better now. I
Okay.
actually visit all the nurseries and all the hospitals and kind of educate the staff and make sure that this is happening. So we're getting back on track. COVID kind of, stalled that, but we're getting back on track with that.
Okay, that would be great. That would be good for adoption agencies, foster care also.
Yes.
However you get your children, I've gotten mine several ways. It's just good to make sure they know about this program. My kids are too old for this now, but I'm sorry we missed it when they were little. Okay, any comments?
We've got some up here.
Okay, let's start with Councilmember Owens.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. High. Great to see you again. This
too.
is outstanding work. And so really excited about what you're doing. Amazing success, 63%. That is
63%.
pretty impressive. And
Mhm.
so how do we talk us through your marketing currently? How are parents finding this program? And then as far as like targeted areas, do you have data in terms of like zip codes that need the most attention right now?
We do. So we look at those heat maps monthly and determine where we need to focus. How the families are finding it out, basically through me solo. I'm going into these areas and doing enrollment events. I'm going into the schools and libraries doing story time, but also talking to the parents after the fact about the program and getting them enrolled in person right then. So that's just how it's happening right now.
So it sounds like you can use some more champions, like
Oh,
you said.
yes.
So how do people sign up to be a champion?
Contact me.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I should say during story time is super fun. So I did a story time. The kids are really little. They were running all over the place. I was simply reading the book. Like, look at the pictures. But I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was great. So, Ms. Matt. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I was just gonna say, Ms. High, can you share your email so that people can?
I absolutely will. Yes.
Make sure one paper so that we can post this and send it
Yes.
to our parent champions, and we can send it to our superintendent, so they can also get this out.
Will do.
Thank you, Ms. High, for the presentation. And I'm actually excited because my son has recently received his preparing for kindergarten book. So we're waiting to read that. But I was interested in knowing about if there's any constructive, like mini lessons or engaging activities that the students or the children and the parents are able to do after reading the assignment to just tap in, to have conversation and, just fun engagement around the book that they've read.
Yes, in the back of most of those Imagination Library books are activities and tips and things that parents can talk about with their kids.
Okay, perfect. And will that be along or connected to the Cincy Reads as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Councilmember Albee?
This is awesome. I'm so jealous this didn't exist when I was a kid. I would have eaten this up. I actually recently went at the Cincinnati Children's Museum Center. They opened up a new, do you want to just give a spiel about what that is?
I was there.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a big interactive center for literacy. So the kids can do hands-on things and also learn about reading, phonics, phonetics, all those things. It's amazing.
Oh.
Check it out, please.
Truly was. I'm pretty sure I saw Councilmember Owens and Rep. Isaacson getting into some of the activities and making their own story time. It was really fun, and I thought that was really great. So I'm curious with this, you mentioned Cleveland did it first,
Yes.
and obviously we're competitive, so we'll do it better. But I am curious, in terms of what they saw, the impact, were they tracking metrics?
They were. Ours is gonna be scaled down,
Okay.
much smaller than theirs, but they did theirs across a whole year.
Mm.
So they were tracking, they wanted to get, I wanna say 600,000 minutes, and they did 1 million.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. So.
In terms from your perspective, kind of from the science aspect of this, what's the long-term impact, of this effort of making sure that kids do have books in their hands and they're engaging
Right.
that way? Can you talk about the long-term?
It's to keep the excitement around reading. So a lot of kids, they think they don't like to read because it's boring or things like that. But with additional fun ways to learn about reading, it brings families together, interacting, learning about different topics. So our goal really is to get kids more excited about reading, get parents more excited about reading and spending that time so that we can increase those reading scores.
I love it. I love all of it. Thank you for this. If there's anything, I know you're going to share out your contact information, the one pager. If there's anything I think any of us can do to be supportive, I think you have many willing hands
Lots
at the
of
table here.
things.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, President Bolton?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. I know that Cincinnati Public Schools for at least 5 or 6 years has been contributing money to Imagination Library in
Correct.
a significant way. I'm curious about one thing about the kids that you mentioned that are enrolled. Because it's associated with a hospital, are we able to know the students, in quotes, students, little people, that are enrolled in CPS?
It's really not associated with the hospital. The hospital is kind of active as a partner.
Okay.
So it's more of a state thing. So yes, we absolutely can provide that information.
I think the council members' suggestions or interest, I think it might be interesting for our superintendent to know, and I know we have the most extensive preschool system in the state of Ohio, thanks to our community and everyone. So it might be really useful for the superintendent to kind of have those names. I think that would be useful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? All right.
I have a
Vice
comment.
President Weinberg.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vice President Weinberg. Okay, sorry.
Christy, thank you so much for this presentation. As a person who is a huge advocate for literacy, I definitely want to be one of your champions, so I will be connecting with you. Just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Cincy Reads. When do you think that you will possibly get out some of that information that we can start promoting it? Because March will be here sooner or later.
Absolutely. Our next meeting is actually next week, and we have an outline of the things that we're going to work on and getting some of that information ready. So I would say mid-September. Yeah, we're going to move rather fast.
Sounds great. I'm very excited to hear about this. I remember when I was in school and they had the Book It program. And I don't know if I'm telling my age a little bit there, but it was just so exciting to be able to read and get all of the books and then get the Book It. But now with this, I know the kids will be very excited. So thank you so much for that.
Right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Look forward to more.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Christy.
My grandkids get their books, and so it works. Thank you so much.
Champion right here.
Yeah. Got a little learner out here. We're going to continue with our agenda, and on the agenda is a topic that is very important. The city and the CPS has been requesting this. We're going to have Rebecca Beach come down, talk about Project Connect, our homeless students. I will share as she comes down on her way down. the other way that Rebecca. That some of the statistics around how many homeless students are in our city and in our district is alarming. We want to ensure that this does not leave the forefront of our minds and our hearts. And so I will say Ms. Beach and her team do an awesome job, but there is more to do and they have needs. She's going to share with us where we are and what we're needing. And so I'm going to turn it on over to Ms. Beach.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. I want to thank Cincinnati Public School Board members and City Council for continuing to allow Project Connect to have a space on this joint meeting agenda and to bring attention to this issue. My name is Rebecca Beach, and I am the Program Manager for Project Connect, which is the program serving children experiencing homelessness within the Cincinnati Public School District. I know in the past I've gotten into a lot about our mission and our services, but tonight I didn't want to be redundant, so I thought I would just kind of recap our mission and then show some of our data and how we ended the school year as of June 30th of this past month. So really quickly, I will just say our mission is to remove educational barriers and foster educational equity through myriad services, advocacy, parent and student engagement, connection to resources, and meaningful enrichment. And so this first slide shows our numbers from the past school year, the 2022-23 school year, compared with how we ended the 23-24 academic year. And as you can see, we had a huge increase in identification. That is the largest leap we've ever had just between school years. We increased almost 25%. And ended the year with identifying 4,304 students, of which 2,861 are CPS students. The students who are non-CPS students are students who we still serve attending either charter schools or students who are ages 0 to 5 because we are required to serve those students and connect them to resources and learning, early learning opportunities. We also had a huge increase in identification of unaccompanied youth. These are students who are not in the care of a parent or legal guardian. This number jumped 59% to 677 unaccompanied youth in our city. And we believe a lot of the increase in this number is often due to parents not having anywhere to go. And so often children are kind of left on their own, especially our teenagers or students who are 17, who parents think can kind of fend for themselves when they don't have any other options. And then quickly, I'll just break down the living situation. So we did have 2,860 families who were doubled up. So these are families who are sharing housing for economic reasons or couch surfing, going from place to place. And that number increased quite a bit from the prior school year. And our shelter numbers stayed pretty consistent. And we attribute this to the fact that there are a certain number of shelter beds and they're typically full. And so it stayed right around 900 between these school years. And then next, families who are in hotels and motels. Though it shows we identified 150 families living in hotels and motels, I want to clarify that that is the living location upon assessment. So when we first make contact with them, the next 3 categories are unhoused students. And so students in the following living situations, we often put in hotels through our emergency housing program. So students in inadequate housing may be families who are living in condemned buildings or storage units or places that we consider not to be fit for human habitat. And as you can see, we've had a really large increase in numbers in families in that situation, as well as substandard living conditions. These are students who are living outside. And then students living in vehicles almost doubled from 66 to 121. So we really are seeing an increase in our families who we consider to be unhoused. And that's really alarming to us. And we know the reasons around it. We're just trying to figure out how to address the needs of our students, because obviously when basic needs are not being met, they're not positioned to learn in the same way. And we're not able to provide equitable access to education. Next slide, please. So this chart, I know I've shown it before. I just wanted to show where we landed the year with the 4,304 students and kind of the gross increase. When I began in the program almost 10 years ago, we served 2,000 less students per school year than we did last school year. So again, we are attributing this to the housing crisis nationally, but especially in Cincinnati. Nationally, they're saying that there has been an increase in family homelessness of 16%. And our numbers last year increased about 24%. So we are kind of above the national average in the city at the moment. Next slide, please. And so we did not used to provide housing services, but as a result of ESSER, we were able to increase our capacity and begin providing some level of housing services to our families. And thanks to the Cincinnati Public School District, we are going to be able to maintain our housing specialist position. This is such an impactful position, so we're really happy to be able to do this. And so we served 1,102 students with housing support last school year. And this could be streamlined referrals to agencies that we have partnerships with. It could be housing resources, connection to landlords. So we have a myriad of services that we offer. One of the services that we offer are expedited shelter placement referrals. So we do have a partnership with Strategies to End Homelessness, the CAP line, where we share a document showing our families who are unhoused and in imminent need of shelter. So we referred 342 students to the CAP line last school year through this partnership, and we were able to place 324 students, which is a 95% placement rate. We were really thrilled about that. We are concerned though, because now there is a new requirement where street outreach workers have to go out and actually visibly see our families sleeping outside or in cars, which can be difficult. We've had families who have called us in the middle of the night because they've had to move, and we've told the street outreach workers where they were. And we also don't like to leave families in unhoused situations. So when we find out a family is living outside or in a car, we are putting them into a hotel, into the Quality Inn. And so to ask them to stay outside until street outreach verifies their living in that situation does pose a barrier. And we have met with the CAP line, and we're trying to work through that at the moment. We are providing emergency hotel stays. This was a service that we began with ESSER funding because we were able to use that funding for this service. And we are actually able to sustain this through grants and donations that we have received this past school year. So we will be able to continue providing our emergency hotel stays. And we still provide the housing choice vouchers. We have an agreement with Metropolitan Housing Authority, where we received in the past 100 housing choice vouchers a year, and our families did receive priority vouchers that increased to 125 this school year. But there has been kind of a monkey wrench thrown in that service, and I'll explain that in further slide. Next slide, please. Jeremy, are you able to click on this impact report? So this past school year, we decided to create an impact report, and I won't go through all the numbers, but I just wanted to point out a few things on here. One of the things I wanted to highlight was that we did serve 645 multi-language learner students. That number increased about 50% from the previous year. So we are seeing an increase in this population, specifically at Carson, West High, and Dater. And we were able to identify 197 preschool age students who we were able to actually place into CPS preschool slots, which was a big success. That number almost doubled from previous years. So we were really happy about that because it is really important to us to be able to connect our children under the age of 5 to early learning opportunities. We also served 346 families with our Order Ahead Food Program, which is the program where we are partnering with the Free Store Food Bank, and families are able to go online. If they don't have computer access, we actually help them with the ordering, and the food is delivered to our resource center, and they can pick it up every 2 weeks. So We were really happy with how many families participated in that program last school year. And then I won't go through all of these numbers, but these are just some of the services that we offered. We divided them up into the housing support services, just basic services such as uniforms, backpacks, school supplies, the things that we used to really focus on, coats and shoes. And academic support, we do really try to have an impact on academics and attendance with our services. We did participate in 581 attendance intervention plan meetings, and we had 380 students who participated in tutoring programs, and 204 students who received counseling services, and 173 students who participated in our summer academic and enrichment program. I also wanted to highlight parent engagement. We did connect and provide engagement opportunities to the parents of or caregivers of 282 of our students, and provided wellness screenings to 109 students. And this is where we actually work with a mobile medical service who goes out to our shelters and provides full health screenings to our students on Saturdays at the shelters. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So I wanted to say thank you to the City of Cincinnati. Project Connected receive part of the City Leverage Grant, and we are extremely appreciative of that. That will allow us to sustain 2 of our positions, part-time contracted positions that we had previously funded with ESSER funding, and that is our multi-language learner position. This is somebody who works specifically with our multi-language learner students and our early learner liaison, and this is the individual who works with our 0 to 5 students. We will also be able to maintain our Kaleidoscope program at the Bethany House, which is a really important program. We love it. It is a play and learn program that both parents, caregivers, and our students really enjoy. And some of this funding will be used to sustain our emergency housing program. Okay, and so finally, just some of the issues that we're having, of course, as you all know, is a lack of affordable housing. So though we have housing services in place, we often just don't have actual solutions for our families. I think I've mentioned before that in the late 90s, we had over 5,000 affordable housing units in the city of Cincinnati, and now we have less than 1,000. And so we are really finding it difficult to find places for our families to go. We also, at the moment, I think we are the only emergency housing program in town. And so we have a lot of families who are calling us, and they may not even be families with children attending Cincinnati Public Schools. And so we don't have emergency housing options to offer them. But we are still continuing to provide up to a week for Cincinnati Public School students and families in the hotel, but just a lack of other options for families. And then, as I mentioned, we receive 125 direct referrals for CMHA, but we received information 2 weeks ago that that program is currently on hold. So they will not be issuing any vouchers through the end of this calendar year, at least. And so that is definitely going to impact our families, because we have really valued that partnership and the ability to be able to get our families vouchers so quickly. And so we do have continued needs for sustaining some of our housing programs and being able to be innovative with what we offer. And then just because we have such high numbers, and I think the needs of our families have increased, and the capacity of what we offer has also increased, just having staff to be able to meet those needs and to continue to really address more than just the academic needs of our students, but those basic security needs as well. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Ms. Beach. I know that this is a topic of concern for everybody on this DS, because we've all talked about it collectively and individually. Does anyone have any questions around what we've seen? Councilmember Harris?
Thank you, Chair Moffitt. So a couple of things I want to bring up, and the Vice Mayor and I actually had an opportunity just a couple hours ago. Acting Secretary Adrienne Todman was in town, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. We had a roundtable with her. Josh Springs, who is in leadership of the Homeless Coalition, brought up a point that I know the Vice Mayor is digging into. We'll work together on this, but part of the challenge that we're experiencing is that HUD's definition of homelessness is so narrow that so many of these kids that need these services, aren't actually able to use the dollars that are allocated to serve them. So there's a point of advocacy. Congressman Lensman is aware of this, that we're going to push around changing that definition so that the existing resources can get out. So I think that I just wanted to add this to the conversation, that there is this actual structural barrier to how we're defining it. But that point was made. It was made to the secretary.
Thank you.
She heard it, and we will follow up with that. In terms of the lack of affordable housing options, we've been working, this council in my office, with a real estate group called RIA. RIA is just a collection of sort of smaller property owners who've expressed an interest in really wanting to be a part of the solution for affordable housing. So I will make sure to Project Connect to RIA, because these are people who maybe have 15 units, 20 units, but they want to be able to work and connect to programs that need housing. And so through our work with the Black Developers Conference, I think one of the things we recognize is that there are actually more people in our region who own units for rental housing, and they don't know how to connect and how to be involved. And so I think we're going to take that work on to make more formal pathways to connect there. So I will ensure that facilitation connection is made.
Thank you so much.
And then the last question I just have is, can you define, when you say there's a stat on here about students living doubled up? Can you describe what does that mean how are you describing that, and what does that mean?
Okay, so you kind of spoke to the difference in definitions. So the McKinney-Vento definition of homeless is anyone who lacks a fixed, adequate, or regular nighttime residency. And so doubled up follows under that category. Those are families who cannot afford their own housing. So they have to be doubled up for economic reasons to qualify for our services. So it has to be that they've lost housing or simply cannot afford housing and are staying with family, friends, or whoever in what we consider to be a doubled up shared housing situation.
I wanted to add to that. I think it's what we refer to as couch surfing, that families that are moving from home to home and sleeping on someone's couch or floor. And that's what you're calling doubled up.
Yeah, it is similar. I mean, sometimes families will stay at a place for a while, but they typically are bouncing from place to place and considered to be couch surfing.
So
and I was going to say, Councilmember Harris, to your point, and that's what Councilmember Harris was talking about, that HUD doesn't consider those families homeless.
Yeah.
Even though they really are, right? I mean,
so so there has to be a transient nature to this as well. So it's like, it's not only that we're doubled up, but we're doubled up and then we're moving.
Not necessarily for McKinney-Vento purposes, no. There does not have to be a transient nature. If you are just simply, if I move in with my aunt because I can't afford housing or because I was evicted and I stay there until I can afford housing again, I do meet the McKinney-Vento definition of homeless. Most of those situations are couch surfing situations because oftentimes families don't allow, families with multiple children to stay with them for long. And so they are often scrambling night to night trying to figure out where they're going.
Yeah.
And we are trying to build relationships with individuals who own property who may be willing to rent to our families. So I would love to connect with you on that. Thank you.
So again, I always appreciate when you are able to provide this presentation, because I think it really puts it back into the forefront of our minds about these issues that are going on. I think one of the things as an old fair housing person, my past work experience, we know that there are two major things that are true about what society looks like today. And one is that there are more families who have more needs because of things that we take away from them, from our systems of how they get resources, how they get funds, how they get support. And yet there are fewer places and a lot of spaces for them to go to get the support, because many of those organizations have also lost resources and funds. When I did fair housing, there was always folks who needed And there was a limited amount of funds to provide to them. And each year it felt like there was even less dollars every year to support those things. And so I think that's something we have to think about as a reality.
Yeah.
I think the second thing that, and we've talked about this before, what also this increase in needs and increase in number of students who are falling within the definition of being homeless or underhoused is that there's a concentration of poverty that creates through this process, right? If I have to move all of my family to a place where we all can live together and we're doubled up, we're typically doubled up in the same space with other folks who are doubled up. We are typically in spaces where we can find affordable housing within a collection of spaces. And so one of the things I think we also have to be thinking about is that this ultimately does lead to some of the issues that we're seeing in our schools these days with overcrowding. Because if we move all the kids to one particular area, or if a lot of kids are forced to live in a certain area, they go to school within that area, that's increasing the number of students within a confined space. And especially some of the students with higher needs.
Yeah.
And families with higher needs. And so I think that's something for us to always be thinking about is how do we keep in our minds of who makes up those spaces in which we have them living in our city. Because we have seen, and I think it's the thing you and I talked about before, where we've seen the increase in the populations in our schools, there also happens to be some places where we've seen the increase in poverty numbers for our students.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's something to say that there are not people with families in other spaces, but to say that some of those resources and needs that are touching our students are some of the most vulnerable students in our city. And so they need that assistance. I think the third thing, and again, I appreciate all the presentation that you did for us today, is just for us to be really pushing for our legislature to reenact some of those resources like the child tax credits and these things that really helped bring a lot of families out of poverty and get them access to resources to be able to do stuff like healthcare. Because I think that's the other factor we see with kids who don't have a steady housing is that they have had higher health needs. They have more of a instability in their educational. So they're more mobile, they go from school to school more often than others. So I think it is a great opportunity for us to really be thinking about this in a more holistic approach because these issues won't go away tomorrow. And that they need a bigger picture thought to how we fix them.
Yeah. Thank you, Board Member Craig. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there are two things. And I absolutely hear what my colleague and Rebecca, what you're saying about doubling up. But I do think it's important to be pretty impeccable with these words because I also don't want to shame or not allow opportunities for generational living. I mean, people are raised in communities. My grandmother bought a house in 1973 in Chicago on a HUD grant that allowed people with fixed incomes to buy a house. At points in my life, there were 11 people who would live in our house. And I think that I turned out pretty fine. And so that's why I was asked about the transient nature. I understand the realities, right? Like these are not laps of luxury, but I didn't grow up in like a big house. Like it was a shoebox house. I go back, I thought I lived in a mansion. Turns out I lived in the shoebox, right? So I just want us to not in this stigmatized generational living, because I think there's real supports to being with aunts and uncles and grandparents. That's just like my little soapbox. Sure. But the thing that I would actually like to enter into this conversation as a point of education, I think also that we can understand from an advocacy perspective is, can you talk about how evictions impact accessing affordable housing, particularly, so you've been evicted or you've participated, let's say in a rapid rehousing program, or you've been evicted. How does that then impact families who are then trying to access housing?
So I always give my children this visual of life, and I tell them right now, your opportunities are like this. And as you make mistakes or things happen, your opportunities will narrow. And so I think that it's similar with families who have experienced eviction, especially if they had a CMHA voucher at the time, a housing choice voucher. It limits their ability for us to be able to get them a voucher again for a period of time. It definitely limits their, the number of landlords who are willing to rent to them. What was good, I guess, as a result of some of the funding that we received post the, onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, was that there was a lot of eviction prevention funding available, and a lot of those programs have stopped taking applications, and so we're not able to prevent eviction as much as we would like to. We don't have the resources, but I mean, definitely, it does end up reducing the number of opportunities available for them to obtain housing, just because landlords will look at that and they'll select somebody that wasn't evicted. Because we have, one parent told me that she went to look at this tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Aspen Village, and she said there was a sign-in sheet and over 50 people had signed up to look at it that day. So there are a lot of people, pining for units.
Now, we want to make sure that everyone knows there still are resources for eviction prevention. Contact anyone up here about that, saying that to the public. We also now have access to counsel, which the city has paid for. And so to make sure that anyone that's under eviction, that they get an attorney, because legal aid is prepared and the city has provided funds.
Well, that's new to me. So families who are facing eviction can actually get access to legal counsel now. Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I remember in the past them saying that was only for criminal situations.
Right.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Madam
Thank you.
Chair, if I can add to that. And Rebecca, I'm sorry, are you on the eviction prevention calls that happen bi-weekly?
Well, Megan Rawhill attends that meeting for Project Connect. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Because I knew
I do sometimes pop in.
Okay. Right. I thought Project Connect was there, but thank you. I just want to highlight the work at the city that we are doing around eviction prevention, and that is access to counsel, which provides rental assistance in one track or legal representation on another. But it is a systemic issue that we have to work on together. And a part of that is including mediation. And so when we start building that out, it's going to be important that this continued advocacy, because it's certainly another system that has to respond to be able to help to reduce these things in our community as well. So again, just uplifting that we are working together.
Yes.
We are investing $1.3 million, I think it is, annually on access to counsel / rental assistance, but we need to grow that pot. And so I also want to highlight that around this issue of eviction, we've been doing eviction observations in courtroom B to come and watch. Thank you, school board member, for being there as well, Ms. Matt. I know the superintendent will be at one of the upcoming ones, but it's a very eye-opening experience. And so this being a collective conversation that we continue to have, because it impacts everything. It impacts the school system. It impacts jobs. It impacts transportation, all of the things. And so again, I am excited about this body of work, and that if we continue to do it collaboratively, I know that we will see great impact in this community.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for your work that you have been doing. I remember when we talked about some ideas, and mediation was one of those ideas. And I thought that would really probably be something that could be really impactful. So I'm glad to hear that you all are doing that, as well as putting funding into legal counsel. Thank you. And I actually am attending the eviction court with Superintendent Murphy. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
And everyone is welcome. Reach out to my office if you're interested in coming.
Does anyone else have, President Bolton?
Yes, thank you. Always impressive. And we're always thankful for your work. I just have a couple of geography questions.
Sure.
Old social studies person in me. With the 4,304 kids that Project Connect has identified, are those within the school district, or are they within the city? Since the school district is larger than the city.
Within the school district.
Within the school. Okay, good. And so we're serving, and there a number of ours are actually enrolled, but there would appear to be then about 1,500 kids that are not enrolled in CPS. Is that about right, or 1,400 or something?
About 1,500, close to 1,500 students who are either not enrolled or who were enrolled and withdrew for some reason. This is a number of students who we worked with last school year. Some of those students are inactive because possibly they lost housing here and had to go to Mount Healthy or another district.
Right. So just my two follow-ups to that. If they are not enrolled in CPS, but live in the district, are they being served by Project Connect?
Yes.
Okay, regardless of whether they're enrolled at CPS. So CPS is then having support of Project Connect, is also helping to hopefully, pray God, serve some of the children and teenagers that are not part of CPS.
Yes. Well, so we do serve them, but we don't provide the same level of service to charter school students. But we are required to ensure they have transportation and to ensure that we identify them and connect them to resources. And then a good number, about I think close to 600 of those students were students who are 0 to 5, who we are mandated to serve. We do have to connect them to, we have to track the numbers for our state report, and we have to connect them to early learning opportunities.
Thank goodness we have those.
Yes.
Early learning.
Yes.
Then my last point then is that how is the county involved with any of what you're doing? Considering this is beyond the city of Cincinnati.
Well, I did meet with the director of Hamilton County Department of Jobs and Family Services and talked about ways that we could work together. And I did actually try to get funding to maintain the housing specialist
That's okay.
position.
You don't need to say any more. Yeah. And now we know a direction that we can take.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you know, there has been some discussion to have the county come. And so the commissioners are definitely considering that, to have county, city, and CPS meetings jointly. So maybe we can one can hope. Board Member Matt.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. So one lens that I would like for us to touch upon is the mental health aspect. We know that, you know, a lot of the students and families are experiencing chronic and complex trauma due to just the instability. And so we see that there's access to services. Can you speak about just the level of support that is provided there, and if the students are able to maintain that stability when they are receiving the service?
Sure. Yes. So we do try to connect our students, especially those who have experienced kind of more severe trauma, to our school-based mental health services. And one of the, I guess, goals of our program is school stability. So under the federal law, students are able to maintain school stability, and we like to keep that stability where it's reasonable and feasible. So if they are receiving mental health services, those can continue. With our students in shelter, when we do the health screenings, the wellness checks, we actually do the ACEs pediatric questionnaire with our students, and we do connect those families and students with mental health services. We, for our younger students, we have a therapist who we work with on the west side of town who takes Medicaid and also does like a sliding fee scale. And she works with our students under the age of 5 who have experienced a lot of trauma, and we can refer directly to her.
Thank you. And then my last question is, in terms of the housing services, so is this basically saying that you all were able to provide stable housing for the families?
So I wouldn't go so far as to say we were able to provide stable housing. So the services that we offer are, we do try to connect families to eviction prevention programs. So try to prevent them from ending up in a homeless situation. We try to get them into shelter, which we did have a 95% success rate with that. And once in shelter, they will have a housing case manager who can connect them with a variety of housing programs such as rapid rehousing. And we also connected families to CMHA. And so 100 families did receive the CMHA vouchers. And then we provided the emergency housing support where we got families off of the streets into hotels for up to a week while we awaited shelter placement. But we don't provide actual housing.
Right. So but it's that just immediate initial support to access.
So we're kind of more responsive in nature. Yeah. And I did think of one other thing. In our summer program, we do have SEL groups as well. So social emotional groups for our students. And we had school counseling interns who did individual counseling with students.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now I just want to be mindful of our time. So Mr. Craig, I know you're next, but if we could just keep our comments a little shorter because we still have several more presentations.
So this is a real quick one, and I think it actually will transition to our next presentation, which is that one of the areas that you said you saw the largest growth is in the multilingual learners. I think that's going to be an issue that we also have to be paying attention to with a number of folks who are moving into the city from areas around the city who have needs and may have instability within housing for other reasons beyond just them not having a job or something to that effect of other reasons.
Sure. And those, so our multi-language learner families are often our most vulnerable families because they often can't access benefits. So the majority of the families in our Order Ahead food program were multi-language learner families. And there also was a shelter opened for multi-language learner families on the west side of town called Casa de Paz, who we began working with a couple of years ago. So I think that's contributed to the increase in numbers.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Beach.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Going to,
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you as well. I just have to say your work is really tremendous and, it's tough. I mean, it's a really tough issue. You see the commitment up here with all of us and with you and the entire city. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And we really deeply appreciate your commitment to this work as well and your work as well.
Thank you.
If anyone on this up here has any questions, Ms. Beach has given us a presentation and her email, I believe, is contained inside. So you can continue the discussion and we will have you back the next time, hopefully with lower numbers, but definitely to give us an update.
Yes,
Thank you
hopefully
so
with lower
much.
numbers. Thank you.
So we are going to move on to Mr. Wright, the Executive Director of Compass, to talk about our ESOL student population, immigration families, and our students.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. And Vice Mayor Kearney, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate being here. I have 2 kids that are in CPS, so it's always fun to come to the board and talk with people. And also, Rebecca, I would like to connect with you before you leave, just about the work. So for those who don't know, I'm Brian Wright. I'm the Executive Director of Cincinnati Compass. It was an organization that came out of the previous mayor's task force on immigration. And so we work with immigrant and refugee communities to help build social, economic, and civic power. And so we focus our work in areas of workforce development, small business development, and civic engagement to help broaden the bench of representation of immigrants in decision-making, and also to help build economic mobility. And so we are based in the city of Cincinnati. We're actually incubated. We're based out of the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber, but we cover the broader metro area. So we do a lot of work with Cincinnati Public Schools, and I can talk a little bit about some of what that work looks like. But just wanted to share a little bit about our work and how, to be clear, we're not a direct service provider, but we play the role as a trusted connector. So we work at different levels. We work to connect community members to resources, to make sure that they are connected to immigration services, housing services, job development, education, and so on. We also then work with providers to make sure that their services are visible and accessible to community members, both culturally and linguistically. So things like what Project Connect does and having a multilingual liaison for the multilingual learners that they're working with. I think that's a really good example. Also work with employers around inclusive hiring, retention practices, and we do some policy work at the state and federal level, which nothing at the federal level has happened in 40 years around immigration. So, but it all happens at the state and local level. And so what we're here to talk about is, a little bit about as it's already been mentioned here, the growing immigrant and refugee community that's here. And so on the positive side, we know that immigrants contribute about $400 million in state and local taxes and possess $2.9 billion in spending power. But that doesn't tell the full story. As we know, there are a lot of challenges that the immigrant refugee community members face. And things we're all concerned about: access to quality and affordable housing, childcare, transportation, that was started the conversation today, safe neighborhoods and quality jobs. What compounds this problem is the issue of language learning, right? The limited English proficiency. And so again, that's what our work helps with around that, working with providers to build their capacity. And so what we've seen in the region is that immigration is driving population growth in the region. And that's important for a stronger tax base, more diversity of ideas, more innovation. And then we are even seeing that within Cincinnati Public Schools, where in the last 5 years, there's a trend in growth of ELL students. And so this has been, upwards of 16% now of the student population are made up of English language learners. But also it's a little bit larger because I don't want to differentiate between English language learners and immigrant refugee communities, because sometimes immigrant refugee communities have English skills. So I think it's a much broader population than that 16%. So we've worked in collaboration with CPS on things around with the large number of unaccompanied minors coming, and then working with Dr. Adam Cooper and some others around an entrepreneurship program. So we piloted it 2 years ago and had it last year, about 75 students to get access to learn about entrepreneurship. Many of them were already working. So it's either entrepreneurship through acquisition or entrepreneurship by starting their own business and what that means. And you can start a business regardless of immigration status. And I don't want to get in the weeds of all this, but we also work with them to say how you can leverage your skills for entrepreneurship, right? And so in thinking about how we support in Cincinnati as a destination with the growth of the population happening, we also have some concerns, and we want to, and I actually had a bunch of notes prepared, but listening to Cincinnati edition today, it sounds like I need to wait until Thursday to some things to come out around supporting English language learners. But I'm going to move forward with it anyway. So, and happy to answer questions. I don't have any slides, but I'm happy to provide any data that I bring up or any follow-up questions that you may have. And so, again, with the population growth around the region happening, and within Cincinnati Public Schools, it's a trend that continues. People are choosing to move here. And a large of that decision is because of the quality of the school and the education, also the access to resources that the school district provides. So we want to continue to do that. But what we've seen is that on one level, and so I think I'm here to also offer, to be here as a resource. We collaborate with the city, and we want to do some more collaboration with the school board as well. And I kind of have two kind of strategies. One, internally, and looking at, we've noticed that with the decrease, and we understand that there's been some really tough decisions around the budget and such. And thank you for your courageous leadership in making these tough decisions, right? So we want to look at a way to look at how do we reinvest resources and opportunities with what we have available to us. And we want to walk through that journey with you. And thinking about, the need for an office or additional staff to support English language learners. Because what we've seen over the last 3 years is a correlation between the cuts in staff and also the decrease in the number of English language proficiency, dropping from 52.9% in 2021 to 44.4%. But it's not just about the language acquisition, because obviously learning English is a crucial aspect of one's journey here, but also getting access to resources and helping them to grow. And this is where we can come in with some of our external partners as well. But internally, we need more staff to help with, advocating for the English language learners within and getting access to multilingual services, whether it's around on-site mental health, social, emotional, behavioral type of services. But then also looking at how to leverage our existing partnerships with the groups that are already involved. So for example, as I mentioned, some of the challenges that immigrants and refugees are facing, yes, housing, childcare, transportation, but also social connections, feeling isolated. And we've seen that was exacerbated during the pandemic. So we do a lot of work with a lot of country and ethnic community-based organizations. Those ones that are directly the micro organizations that are embedded at the local level. They're also often the first point of contact. So working with them to build those social connections, but also with larger groups. There's a group here called Refuge Collaborative. So they're based in Aiken, Withrow, and West High. And so we know that EL populations are not just anymore in Roberts Academy, but are spread throughout. Earlier Rebecca mentioned Carson and Dater. We're also seeing AWI and some others. And so wanting to build relationships with Refuge, who also does mentoring, to build that social connection, to build that peer-to-peer mentorship, but also groups like the African Professional Network. So we're seeing students coming here, yes, from Guatemala and Mexico, but we're seeing a large West African community that's coming here, particularly Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Nigeria, and others. Also from Syria and some other places as well. So how do we connect with some of those other organizations like the African Professional Network, the Nepali Language and Arts Center, to help build those professional connections, not only for the students, but also for their family members to get more gainful employment. And then other groups like Refugee Connect, who also provides health navigation, and then legal services like the Immigrant and Refugee Law Center. Because oftentimes and as I mentioned earlier, with $400 million paid in state and local taxes, that's money paid into systems that they can't benefit from. So how do we look at ways to help the families who may not have access to certain resources, to really get into the smaller nuances that are compounded by one's immigration status? So that's where we come in as that connector to walk side by side with the city and with the school board to help make those connections with not only the organizations I've mentioned, but also the direct service providers like Catholic Charities, Santa Maria, the ones that you know very well. Community Action Agency, obviously the Human Services Chamber has a New Americans Advisory Council that with St. Vincent de Paul, IRLC, Heartfelt Tidbits, and others that provide really good services around the region. So we would want to work with you all to help to see how to advance to support this growing population that we're seeing that are choosing to make Cincinnati home. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And so let me just say that it's Vice President Weinberg who suggested that we have this presentation. So I'm going to turn the mic to you first. You were talking about our increase in students who speak other languages besides English as their first language.
And yes, it was just.
So Brian, so happy you came.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And I do know that our former board member, Morosky, also brought this up as well. And so I will follow up with any additional questions. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
So Mr. Wright, would you mind giving emailing us a written report of the organizations that you mentioned? I know I was trying to take notes and I couldn't get them all, and the data that you presented.
Fast.
I was trying. But in the best interest of time, and I know you have so much more that you probably could share. If you could just get us something written that we could share, and we can definitely publish that for the public as well, because what you offered is really, really valuable. I don't want us to miss it. So send it to us, and then we will make sure that everyone up here gets this, in addition to the other city council members that are not here as well.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, my apologies for talking fast. I heard there was a time constraint, so I just wanted to get through everything. But we're happy to, again, share the resources and compartmentalize around legal services, housing opportunities, and then social services and job development for not only the students, but also the family members as well. So happy to put that list together for the.
Thank you. And we're going to reserve the right to call you back in for the next meeting.
Please,
too.
happy to be here.
So please stay tuned.
I was going to say, are there any challenges you're facing? And you're facing a lot of challenge, but any challenges you'd like to bring to our attention that you want us to think about?
I think a crucial thing is just looking at the intersectionality of identities and how people may experience homelessness differently, or being unhoused differently. And how do we look at, when we're looking at allocation of funding, to do so in a way that is accessible to all students and families, regardless of immigration status? I think that's a crucial thing. And also to lean on us to get access to data and maybe find some new partners who are deeply engaged with this work, but may not have the pathway, the platform to get here, right? So I think that's another way, just as an offer, as to be a resource to the council and to the board as well. And just thinking about, when looking at student support and with the families and how we can think through the strategies that best meet the students where they are.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And as Dr. Moffett said, we will be calling you back. And really, for me, I just really want to make sure that people understand that Compass exists and all the great work you do and all the connections. Bless you, President Bolton. And so that's really important because you do excellent work. And we're very thankful for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So moving on, we are going to talk about transportation. We've had a nice warm up to that earlier, but now we're going to call up Superintendent Murphy to talk about, and Metro, and Chief Burkhart, to talk about what the CPS side is doing regarding transportation. And guests, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Moffett. Chris Burkhart is coming forward for the presentation.
We did have a presentation yesterday at the board meeting, and it is on YouTube if anyone would like to go visit. It was pretty extensive, so you can review that. And then we have our guests here today.
We're running a little over time, but let's see if we can finish by 8 o'clock. We said 7:30. Are we okay with 8 o'clock? Okay.
Is everybody okay? We can get you a water. We got water. Everybody good?
8 or
And some
earlier,
snacks.
but 8 o'clock is our cutoff. Okay. Thank you for coming.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of transportation, both Yellow Bus and Metro. As was said before, we did a pretty extensive update on transportation yesterday. So I'm just going to give you some highlights today. And obviously there's going to be a lot of questions. All of our schedules for our metro routes were updated on August 1st. We're reminding parents that if they want to look at those routes from home to school, to go into the either Google Maps or the transit app, they must choose an actual school day to see when that bus is going to transverse that route. So make sure that they choose an actual school day to make sure that that route actually shows up at the right time on Google Maps or the transit app. Metro staff will be available at all of our high schools for open houses to be able to answer all questions for families and students on how to use the pass, how to get from point A to point B, and they will be there as long as there are questions. This year, which something new that Metro and CPS have embarked upon is using an actual RFID pass, and we no longer have flash passes. Flash passes were those tickets that each student had that all they had to do was show to the driver and they could get on the bus and use it at any time. We actually have actual RFID passes that I'll talk a little bit about more in a minute. Our regular
And
pass,
RFID, is that on the phone or is that still a physical pass?
it's still a physical
It's
pass.
still, but you have to scan it.
Yes, correct. So the passes will be active from 6:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. That is an hour different from last year. Last year they were available till 6:30 p.m. Our extracurricular passes will be available till 10:30 p.m. and that's not a change from last year. Parents are also available to ride with their son or daughter on August 14th all the way up through August 23rd. So anytime during that period of time, parents can ride on Metro. All they have to do is tell their driver that they are riding to or from school, and the driver will let them on. Next slide, please. Metro staff will also be present at high schools for dismissal and major transfer points in transit centers, not only for the first week of school, because we know that that's where students might need the most help, but they're actually going to do that all year. And I have a Metro team here to talk a little bit more about that. Last year, Metro added 2 additional crosstown routes, the number 22 and the number 36. And that was to bypass Government Square and to make sure that we had more efficient routes from home to school. And CPS and Metro are constantly talking about what routes can be added and what are the options that students need to be able to get from home to school very efficiently. The number of student transfers down at Government Square are almost down to pre-pandemic numbers. Back in 2019, the number was 190, and right now we're about 203. So we know that we are doing everything we can to make sure that students are getting from home to school with as little number of transfers as possible. Next slide, please. As I said, there's no more flash passes. All the CPS passes will work via the fare box. So the fare box on every bus, and that RFID pass will work with those fare box. We also have a expectation document, which I think everyone has. It was at the front of the sign in. But CPS and Metro have come together to put expectations together for students who are riding Metro. And so previously CPS had a list of expectations for yellow bus. Metro had expectations to ride Metro. And so we've combined those, really had a lot of dialogue on what those expectations are across, no matter how you're getting to school, what are those expectations on the vehicle that you're riding. Also to talk about what we're doing to curb the number of students who traverse Government Square. Metro will be able to provide CPS weekly a listing of students who go through Government Square who do not need to. That will allow the conversation at the school level to happen between the school leadership teams as well as those students to talk about why they're going through Government Square if they don't need to. And we'll also be able to send a robocall to the families so that they know what's happening as well. So we're hoping that's another service that we'll be able to offer this year with the new cards and with the RFIDs. We're actually able to track each student as they transverse on the Metro versus just having the flash pass in previous years. We just had a generic card. Next slide. So the next couple of slides are all about the expectations. So the student expectations are in the first slide. I know everyone has them in front of you, so I won't go through them. Next slide. We also have CPS provided Metro bus passes. So we have a little bit of discussion about those. Next slide. Parent and caregiver responsibilities in relation to their son or daughter riding Metro. Next slide, please. And then monitoring enforcement of the card and making sure that if there is any misbehavior or misuse, that we're following the school culture plan and the student code of conduct. So with that, I will open it up for questions. Hopefully that was a high level overview of the presentation that we did yesterday.
Before we take questions, I just want to clarify one piece. I think everyone saw on the presentation as of January 2024, there were 203 students who would need to transfer through downtown Cincinnati. With the 7th and 8th graders being added to the Metro, we are estimating 20 to 40 students and not the 2,000. So we just want to clarify that. 20 to 40. Based on the data that we have, 20 to 40 students, 7th and 8th grade.
And that's that need to go downtown.
Who would need to go downtown to transfer in order to get to and from school and home, not 2,000.
All right, so I'm sorry, so I was going to say, just to clarify, so to make sure we're understanding. So my understanding is that, so now last year, 7th and 8th graders had the choice of using yellow buses or Metro. And so I understand about 1,100 used Metro. Now they have to use Metro, and so that's another 1,000. But out of that 1,000, they all do not have to transfer downtown. And so if they go and transfer downtown, their families will be notified that that's in violation of their privilege to use the bus. Okay.
And just for clarity, it's not all 7th and 8th graders district wide. It's only 7th and 8th graders at our high schools. So if you're at a K-8 school, a K-12 school, 3 through 12 school, or 4 through 12 school, you would not be impacted by this.
Okay. Madam Chair.
Councilmember Harris.
Can we talk about this penalization for, I guess, so there are these real practical things that we have to solve. But I also think that, like, I'm gonna make this personal. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I grew up in the hood. After high school, I went downtown. Downtown was fun and it was safe. And so I'm just a little challenged by this idea of like containing kids and they can't go to this part of the city. I think, to me, I would want, I don't know, that's just really challenging language in general. So I guess my idea is that what, Mrs. Rowley and the group that she brought together was like, what's the intentionality after school? Like, so where kids are going. So I think that like, that has to be a focus, but and I'll just speak from a city perspective. If there is a space in which we can work with our partners at 3CDC to think about how do we activate spaces so that, these citizens, these children who are citizens of Cincinnati, who are, they live in their city, that they can live in the city. I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable with this idea about this containment and preventing children from traveling to parts of the city.
Right, Mr. Harris, and Councilman Harris, I totally understand what you're saying. So let me say there's a piece of this that we haven't talked about yet that you'll hear about later. And that is finding activities for young people to go to where, one, they can get fed. When you just go downtown and you're hungry and there's nowhere to eat, or maybe you don't have money to eat. So there are a lot of activities, and activities beyond the classroom is going to speak a little bit later about that too. We're talking to our Cincinnati recreation centers. How do we attract our young people to positive activities? One, where they can get fed, get cared for, do some fun things, do some, activities that really help them, a positive environment for them. So that's a good part of it. It's not really about penalizing them or making them feel unwanted. It's about attracting them to a positive area where their needs can be met.
And I
So I
want to
think that's a
invite,
real important part of that.
I'm so sorry to cut you off.
That's
I want to invite you all to watch the board meeting from yesterday because we had an extensive discussion to Metro around not being punitive and punishing students that are just going downtown versus students because they want to versus students that are going downtown and then there's a problem. And so that is part of the benefit of the RFID cards because it will be attached to a name. And so we can tell, okay, if 50 students went downtown and there was an altercation, now we know the names of those students. We're not trying to punish the 40 students who did nothing wrong, but we do want to identify very quickly who went down there that didn't have to and who went down there and there was something that went wrong. And so that we talked about that and Metro also gave a more extensive description. But I also want to invite my colleagues who were at that meeting to chime in on that as well. Vice President Weinberg, would you?
Well, I just had another quick question and then we'll come back to that. Superintendent Murphy, can you just restate what was the number again? Because that was going to be my question. I just wanted to clarify and make sure that it wasn't the 2,000 and it's actually what number?
20 to 40
In addition,
additional seventh and eighth graders, in addition to the number of 203 that Mr. Burkhart referenced as of January 2024.
If you'd like, I could talk about how we derived that number, right? As was mentioned before, in last school year, Metro produced about 10,000 student passes. Of those 10,000, it was mentioned about 1,100 were seventh and eighth graders, right? So about 10% of the population were seventh and eighth graders that had Metro cards. If we're anticipating about 1,000 increase of seventh and eighth graders, adding, roughly another 10% to our numbers. When we look at where people live and go to school, those that are required to go through Government Square, what we have seen is an average in 2024, and we chose January intentionally because you're not going downtown to transfer in January unless you need to, right? It's not the time to hang out or whatnot. So geographically, we think about what we saw was around 200 students on average use Government Square in the afternoon. So if we have about a 10% increase in overall, we're anticipating somewhere between 20 to 40 increase of seventh and eighth graders that might be traversing through Government Square in the afternoon.
And I just want to mention too, so a lot of young people, a lot of folks have talked to our young people and a lot of them say they need something to do. They want and they want to socialize it. I mean, that's part of being that age group. The social part is really important. They want something to do. Rec at Night is a great example of that issue of bringing young people together at our rec centers. It's been very successful. It's a program that our city manager started. And it's been wonderful. I mean, in addition to getting haircuts and nails done and, bouncy houses and games and DJs and just, dancing and just all kinds of fun things are going on. And it's a positive environment where our children get the love and attention that, they need and want. And they also get fed, which is really important. And there are positive adults there who really care about them. And so we want them in those kinds of environments. And so there are lots of plans that are getting in place for that. So.
President Bowman.
I really appreciate Member Harris's comments. This board takes great offense, frankly, the way some of our kids are being characterized and portrayed. Whether it's the media or whatever. So thank you. I will say, as the old person here on the stage, for 40 years, the downtown people that are business folks and others, whether it's to attract tourists or whatever, have tried to not have teenagers come downtown. It's been a culture, and it's one of the major reasons that we previously had dedicated routes. The good thing about what Metro is doing now, after so much work by the vice mayor and our administration and Metro, is that we now have greater accountability, and they'll be able to tell us, very frankly, the kids that need to be there. And the reality is they're going to share some statistics that will show how few of our students have multiple transfers, that there are now, with the increase of services in Metro, there are more direct routes for all of our kids, because our responsibility is to get them to and from school and preferably have them stay after school for tutoring or experiences. And I know Recreation Commission's working hard on that as well. But I think there's been a tremendous, I have a lot more confidence right now. But thank you for what you're saying, because we want our young people to love their city. I do have one real quick question. When you say CPS, we're buying the cards or the passes or whatever they're called now. It's high tech for me. We're doing that for charter kids too, and parochial kids too, and private kids. So is there a way that we discern whether or not, I mean, we're buying the cards or passes. Do we discern, because that's what we want to be able to hold our young people accountable?
Yeah, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So every card is attached to a student. That number is attached to a student as well. So we can drill down to that level of specificity if we need to.
Thank you. And thanks for all that you all are doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chair. Do we say Ms. Chair for? Yeah. No, I just want to say thank you for both important entities, CPS and Metro, our transportation partner, for working all of this out. I do feel confident as well, Board President, Ms. Bolton, for, the intentionality on making sure that we know where young people are. And so without having seen yesterday's committee meeting, I trust that it is not a punitive approach that we are taking, but one that is about accountability, which is very important.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think, everyone in the room here really loves our kids and cares about them. I think that's important. It's an important point that Councilmember Harris made and that President Bolton made. I think we have to start there. We have to love our kids. They're our children. We have to keep them safe. We want them in positive activities. And so we're all working together toward that goal. And I think it's important to make sure that our children are respected.
Councilmember Albee.
Thank you. Thank you for this. And I understand there was a long conversation last night, so I don't mean to elongate or retread things that have been already covered, but I want to first reemphasize the importance of giving kids fun, safe places to go and feeding them, all very important. I want to thank Ms. Rowley and our other community partners in the audience who went down to Government Square and did the hard work. I just saw the Urban League out. I should have thanked them as well. So in terms of counting heads, so I think if I'm doing my math right, it sounds like in January, there will be taking that kind of numbers, basically now around 220 to 240 kids that would, quote, need to be downtown. How are we thinking about kids who maybe have jobs they're going to, after school activities, or to Councilmember Harris's point, who just want to have fun, especially when it gets warmer? I think that's the question around the intentionality, is how are we accounting for those kids, not just the ones who have to be on those routes to get home?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer the second part first. The extracurricular passes are exactly for those students who have something else going on after school, or have a sporting event, or need to go to a job, for example. So those passes allow for that to happen, and that's exactly what they're for. We also want to make sure that as we are talking through this, that we are making sure that we realize which students need to go through Government Square, as President Bolton was saying, but also those ones who are down there for whatever reason they want, that we just realize what those options are and what the reasons are. And so if something were to happen, that we can go back and track back, but we're not stopping students from going to where they need to go. There's many students who take multiple buses to get both to school and home when they can be taking one bus. And so some of that's intentional as well. We don't stop students from riding with their friends or taking an additional bus or walking multiple blocks to hop on a different line to get to school with their friends. So it's really an open system right now. We just want to make sure that we have the accountability that we didn't have previously. And this has been a situation where we've had a discussion for the better part of a year now, really serious conversations, I would say, the last 6 or 7 months to get to the point where we are now.
I appreciate that. And I know there's a separate working group working on this. And so this group here probably doesn't need to rehab all those conversations. So, I think my takeaway from this conversation is trusting in the group that's already been talking on both sides, city, metro, CPS, and making sure that we don't end up in a situation like we did earlier this year, where it does hit a crisis moment where we are having people rushing and having, SOS, putting out SOSs to be down in Government Square. So truly just putting my faith back into all our colleagues who are working hard on this to make sure we are going into this new school year thinking critically about how are we handling kids coming in and out and giving them opportunities to have fun while making sure everyone's safe.
And let me just add, because I'm really glad that Councilmember Albee mentioned Ms. Rowley and Mr. Williams and others who are down there. Like, your work is critically important. That, I've heard you on the phone. I've been on the phone with Miss Rowley, and I hear her talking to the kids, like, how are you doing? Are you okay? That kind of interaction with our children is so important. So thank you for that. And so that's all part of this and of embracing our young people and finding positive solutions. So,
Madam Chair, can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, whoever's Madam Chair, I'm addressing.
Question out.
So yeah, two things. And, Mrs. Rowley has corrected us for 15 years as Mrs. Rowley, because I don't want to get cursed out. So,
just a
but, President Bolton brought up a good question. So I'm wondering about this number. Does this number include the 2240 include students from non-CPS schools that are downtown as well? It does.
It does not.
It does not.
It does not.
It does not. Last year, many of the non-CPS students were not in this smart card program, right? And they were some of the schools were just purchasing bulk passes from our sales office and distributing those to their students. So those numbers were not included in the numbers that you see because they were not trackable. They were not part of the CPS pass distribution system. So Mr. Burkhart would have to speak to where that stands with the charters and the non-CPS schools. I believe the intent is for them to purchase the same type of passes through the program in 2024-25. But to answer your question, no, those students and that pass activity and ridership at Government Square was not included in the numbers we just discussed.
Yeah, to clarify, if a charter school is going through CPS, because we're required to provide transportation for them, if they are going through CPS, then they are counted in those numbers. If they are not going through CPS and they're taking it upon themselves to get students to their school through the Metro card and they're just buying passes at the ticket office like any other individual would do, then those aren't counted in those numbers.
So, Vice Mayor Kearney, I'm just thinking about, like, as a role as a council member, I would wonder, and I think this is a question for law, it would seem to me that then the solution would be that these schools purchase, I don't want to start a storm, purchase the passes through CPS because that is the channel with which we're able to track. So I don't know the legality of that, but if we're looking about how we move to solution, then it seems like I didn't hit a hornet's nest.
I'm gonna just also share this too, because you opened up a can of hornet's nest here. But I also want to share this too. First of all, I will say on behalf of CPS, thank you to Mrs. Rowley and the team that went down there, and to the working group, because as a board, we were not aware of all of the information. I also will share that in speaking with the city manager and our superintendent, they are going to get together and have a more extensive conversation that has not happened yet, but will happen soon. And a lot of our questions will be answered with data. So by the time that we come back to our next meeting, the two administrations will have met and will be able to give us, in collaboration with the working group, in collaboration, hopefully with Mrs. Rowley and her team, and I mean no disrespect, Mrs. Rowley and the volunteers that went, we will be able to have more succinct information. What I've also shared with the city manager is that the board is going to look at, the CPS board is also going to look at being more intimately involved in that as well, so that we are kept abreast. Because in the spirit of this type of meeting, it is collaborative and we all need to know and own up for what is happening to our students on every level. So from this point forward, we've got the commitment from City Manager Long, we've got the commitment from Interim Superintendent Murphy that we will all commit to being involved. Metro has been here, all of our partners, so that we can get before another January and find out what's happening. But to answer your question directly, it would be helpful, since we have to pay for charters and private, all of them, that they go through us so that we can keep identification on who is going where, whether they're CPS or not, and then bring that data back down to this group and any other group so that we can get to what we need to get to. Does anyone have any other questions of Chief Burkhart, Superintendent Murphy, and our Metro guests?
I just want to say this is just an example of City Council and CPS board and all of our partners working together, and it's beautiful. So thank you.
President Bolton.
Just a comment. I think one of the big things is about the 7th and 8th graders, and we're working through that and appreciate those numbers. But it's also, as I think we mentioned towards the end of last year or mid-year, that at least one of the larger charter networks was not using us last year. And that's the Don folks who had separate buses. And this time, it's my understanding they will be working through us because they've lost their fleet. How many, do we know how much of an increase that will be regarding not just Government Square, but anticipating those passes, since we are by law. And my new favorite council member over there, they don't purchase a thing. We do. Taxpayers of Cincinnati School District purchase those passes.
Yeah, so we are in talks with Don on providing bus passes for them this year, and it's been an ongoing process between us, them, and the Ohio Department of Education. So the greatest information we have right now is going to be about 600 individuals through Don who are going to get a Metro Pass. Because we haven't identified those individuals yet, we can't put their addresses in to see where they're coming from and where they're going to, which is one of the things that we're working through right now. So we don't know how many of those students are going to be going through Government Square at this time, but the rough estimate is around 600 students that we know of right now. Their school year doesn't start until September, so we've got some time to work through that.
Okay, well, keep us updated on that. That would be great. That's good. Thank you. Are we good? Okay. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay, we've got to move forward. You know, I'd like for Sally Grimes, Executive Director of Activities Beyond the Classroom, to just speak briefly about some ideas that are in the works, nothing definite.
Like 2 and 2, so 2 minutes, 2 seconds.
Yeah. And I'm sorry you had to wait so long. We're just.
Hi, everybody. So Activities Beyond the Classroom has been involved in a lot of these conversations about what role can we play in this. And if you look at all the research, which I'm sure you all have done, one of the 6 pillars is providing more opportunities and activities. So we've had conversations with many of you, met with Mrs. Rowley, quite a few people in this room to figure out what part can we play. And we've had quite a few ideas about potentially looking at more after school opportunities to keep kids at school, giving them more things to do there. Had many conversations with Mr. Betts at CRC about, because ABC, we don't have place, we have programs. So we need places to do the programs. We've been talking to Mr. Betts about possibly doing more programming within the CRC buildings, going to where the kids live. We've also talked about if there's a space near Government Square, we could set up some kind of a teen club there and have tutoring and food and activities for the kids there. So lots of different activity ideas, lots of different location ideas, and we are open to all of these conversations with all of you in the room whenever we're ready to have them more officially.
Thank you so much. And just my understanding is that there's a proposal that that ABC is going to put together and pass to our city manager to look at. So, and also
Yes.
to Ms. Murphy, our superintendent. So that would be great. That would help us a lot. So a lot of positive things happening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll invite you back, Sally, at our next meeting to give us an update on anything that you've gotten from the collaboration.
And can I just point out, Senator Kathy Ingram is here and we haven't really given her a shout out. Thank you so much for being here, Senator Ingram.
The next item I'm just gonna mention, crossing guards. We have an agreement with the city that for now, they will apply, people that we need crossing guards, they will apply at the city. Is that right?
It's the same
Is
process.
this right? They will apply to be a crossing guard.
That's correct. And there is a slide for that. Just traditionally, the city of Cincinnati has hired and managed the school crossing guards. And on the next slide, Rob, you'll see bullet points to walk through this. The district has been asked to, and in the past, the district has provided the budget for that. And it's been about $1 million on average the last couple of years. We have been asked to transition to total ownership management of the crossing guards, and we do accept that responsibility. We have asked the city for a 6-month transition in order for us to get someone in place to be able to oversee this work. We have hired someone to do that, and we are working towards having full ownership of our crossing guards.
Thank you. Any questions?
Okay, so I think that concludes the meeting. So we'll turn it over to President Bolton.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Dr. Moffitt.
We do have
there's
one
something on
last
the
item,
back.
but we're gonna ask Superintendent Murphy to be really brief. Did you want to talk about update school
I
updates?
am very happy,
I'm so sorry,
Vice Mayor, to be very brief.
Okay.
We opened school on Thursday, August the 14th. Our current enrollment is about 33,753 students. We are enrolling every day, both here at central office and in our customer care center, as well as in schoolhouses, if that's more convenient for our families. Should I stop there?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
May I add one thing to that real quickly? So our city manager has something that she's sending out. We're asking, and this is actually per a suggestion by Superintendent Murphy, to have our city employees come out and clap at our students August 14th when school opens, to give them that, we're behind you, we're supporting you. Let's come love on our kids, right? So that there's a sign up genius that's going around. So one of our interns, actually, Layla Cooper, pulled it together. Yeah, so just everybody keep that in mind.
Better than the
You are-
teenagers and the kids.
You are guaranteed to have fun that day. That morning. We got
Can I say
a big building.
Madam Chair, just very quickly, I want to commend this board for your selection. I told Ms. Murphy privately, but I want to make it public, that I think you have made an excellent choice. I want to let Ms. Murphy know and this board know that you have my 10,000% support. I'm a phone call away in anything I can do as a legislator and a private citizen to make sure that CPS succeeds. I'm a proud product of CPS.
Woohoo.
And this
Go Bulldogs.
mission, there you go, Bulldogs.
Go Eagles,
This mission,
go Eagles.
this mission,
Okay, let's not start.
I'm trying to get us out of here. This mission of success is on all of us, but thank you to my CPS board, all of you sitting here in the past board, member Mike Roski, thank you, because I do believe there's no knock on anybody else, but this place called Cincinnati Public Schools is headed in the right direction. So I commend you all and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. That was well said and definitely needed. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. And we don't have a date for our next meeting, but it will be
About 3 months. Yeah.
maybe 2. It will be sometime this year. Have a great night.
Madam Chair, the chair will entertain a motion.
Oh, I will
and a
entertain a motion
second
for us to leave.
to get adjourned.
Second.
Second.
Second. All in favor?